It was supposed to be just therapy. Nothing dramatic, nothing messy. I'd been going once a week for a little over a year, mostly to deal with lingering issues from a rough breakup and the general chaos of turning 30 and still not having a damn clue what I was doing with my life. My therapist, Dr. Max Brennan, was one of those grounded, ultra-calm types. Mid-50s, cardigan even in July. Always had a ceramic mug of something herbal and warm hands when he shook yours. His office was all soft lighting and neutral tones and shelves lined with psychology books and well-fed succulents, and he was good at what he did. He didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. He told me what I needed to hear. Kept me honest. I trusted him. That trust is probably why I didn't feel weird talking to him about chillin', even on weeks where that was all I could think about. There was never any judgment. Just quiet listening, thoughtful nods, and the occasional question that sliced through my bullshit like a scalpel. So when I met Liam, I didn't think twice about talking to Dr. Brennan about it. At first, we met the way you meet people now, late at night, on a dating app, both swiping while pretending we weren't looking for anything serious. He messaged me first. I've never seen someone make a hoodie and glasses look this good. Are you real? I laughed out loud. His profile said he was 26, an artist, and loved breakfast for dinner. I responded with something dumb about being 85% hoodie and 15% gay panic. We traded messages for about an hour before I gave him my number. The next night, we met for drinks. He showed up in paint-stained jeans and a denim jacket with a ripped elbow, messy hair, this sleepy kind of smile, and a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the most interesting thing in the room. He was younger than me by a few years, but it didn't feel like it. He was grounded in that I've already seen some shit kind of way. I liked that. I liked him. It started casual. Just a few hangouts. But within a couple of weeks, we were staying over at each other's places more often than not. He'd paint in the mornings while I made us coffee. I'd go to work and get texts from him during the day. Photos of what he was working on, or dumb selfies with his cat on his head. I started mentioning him in therapy. Just little things at first. I've been seeing someone. He's really chill. It's easy, you know? Dr. Brennan nodded, as he always did, asking what it felt like to be with someone easy after what I'd been through. He was genuinely curious. Encouraging. We talked about my fears of being vulnerable again, about how weirdly good it felt to be liked without having to perform for it. I didn't say his name at first. It wasn't intentional. It just didn't seem necessary. It was one of those things you don't realize until later, until the point where it feels too late to go back and say, by the way, there's this one tiny detail. The name didn't come up until the 6th or 7th session after Liam and I started seeing each other. I was talking about how he'd gotten upset with me for not texting back right away during a night out with friends. And did you understand where he was coming from? Dr. Brennan asked, voice as calm as ever. Yeah, I did, I said, running my hand through my hair. Liam's not needy, but he's sensitive, I guess. I think he's been burned before. You know? Dr. Brennan nodded slightly, then paused. And for the first time in over a year of sessions, I saw something flicker across his face. Just for a second. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but didn't. Instead, he wrote something down in his notebook and said, "Tell me more about how you responded to that." I kept talking, but I didn't forget that pause. A week later, it all made sense. I was at Liam's apartment. His place was a loft in this converted warehouse downtown, full of paint fumes and half-finished canvases, and soft music that never stopped playing. I'd crashed there the night before after one too many glasses of wine, and was just pulling on my jeans when I heard the buzzer. "Can you grab that?" Liam called from the bathroom. I hit the intercom button. "Hello?" "It's me," came a voice I knew immediately. Dr. Brennan. I froze. My therapist's voice. At my boyfriend's apartment. I opened the door on autopilot, footsteps on the stairs, and then, there he was, in real life. Wearing a long coat, scarf still around his neck, holding a manila envelope. His eyes met mine, and I watched the recognition crash over his face in real time. We both just stood there, He blinked once, twice. Then he said softly, "You're Liam's boyfriend." And I realized, his voice trembling slightly, his grip tightening on the envelope, that Liam was his son. There's a kind of silence that hits so hard, it doesn't even feel like sound is missing. It feels like gravity shifts. That's what it felt like, standing there in Liam's doorway, staring at Dr. Brennan. No, Max Brennan, who wasn't just my therapist anymore. He was my boyfriend's father. And now he knew. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. My brain was a tangled mess of half-sentences and internal screaming. Dr. Brennan, Max, broke the silence first. "I should have known," he said quietly, mostly to himself. "I had a feeling, but I didn't let myself consider it." His eyes scanned my face, flicked briefly to the open door behind me, where the sounds of Liam brushing his teeth echoed faintly, then back to me. "I didn't know he was your son," I finally managed, voice hoarse. "I believe you," he said, nodding slowly, "but now you do." There was no anger in his voice, not yet, just this tired kind of weight, like someone realizing they'd been walking straight into a storm they should have seen coming. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it, but it also felt absurd to apologize for falling for someone before I knew their last name. He gave a small nod, then adjusted the envelope under his arm. "I should go," he said. This was just something for Liam's taxes. And then, like nothing had happened, he turned toward the door. But right before stepping out, he paused and glanced over his shoulder. "We'll talk about this. Not here. And not during your next session. You should find another therapist." And then he was gone. I stood in the doorway for a full minute after the door closed, the sounds of the stairwell swallowing him up. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "Hey!" Liam called from the bathroom. Was that the mail guy or something? I shut the door. Turned, leaned against it like it was the only thing holding me up. No. That was your dad." Liam peeked out, toothbrush still in his mouth. "Seriously? What'd he want?" "Dropped something off for you." Liam shrugged, disappeared again. "He does that. Total control freak when it comes to my finances. You'd think I was 12. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and tried to act like my world hadn't just tilted on its axis. I didn't sleep that night. Liam was curled up next to me, soft breaths warming the crook of my neck, completely unaware that the guy he'd been dating for the last 2 months had been unpacking his emotional trauma once a week with his father. I kept playing the moments back, every time I mentioned Liam without saying his name, every story I had told in therapy, every intimate detail I had shared. Max had probably pieced it together weeks ago. Hell, maybe longer. He was smart, observant, professional to a fault, but he hadn't said anything. That next morning, I canceled my upcoming appointment. The receptionist asked if I wanted to reschedule. I said no. I didn't tell Liam. I told myself it wasn't the right time, that I needed to figure out what the hell I was even feeling first. But if I was being honest, I was scared. I didn't know how he'd react. If he'd be furious, hurt, embarrassed. Liam had always talked about how complicated his relationship with his dad was. Now I was another layer of that. 2 days later, I got an email from Dr. Brennan's personal address. Short, precise. "We should meet, just you and me, not therapy, just to talk. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., address below." No signature, no passive-aggressive phrasing, just a location. It was a little cafe near the park, one I'd actually recommended to him months ago, during a session. I guess he remembered. When I showed up, he was already there, sitting at a table in the far corner, 2 cups of tea already on the table, 1 chamomile, 1 black with lemon. He remembered how I took it. I sat down. He didn't say anything at first. "Thanks for meeting me," I said quietly. He nodded once, then finally looked up. "You don't owe me an apology. Let's get that out of the way." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "You couldn't have known. You never mentioned his name. And Liam never mentions mine. We keep that part of our lives separate." I nodded, slowly. "But now we're here," he added. And I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. I care about him, I said. I need you to know that. This isn't some fling. I didn't seek him out. We met by chance. Max gave a tired, almost amused smile. Yes. What are the odds? We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, Do you love him? It was the first time anyone had asked me that. I looked down at the cup of tea. Thought about the way Liam looked in the morning, how he always kissed me once before his first cup of coffee, how he reached for my hand when he was half asleep. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm close. He nodded, sipped his tea, then leaned back in his chair. Well, he said, then I guess I have a choice to make between being a father and being your former therapist. What does that mean? It means I won't stand in the way, he said, but I'm not going to lie to my son either. He deserves to know. From you. That landed like a punch to the chest. I know, I said. I'll tell him. I waited 2 more days before I told him. Not because I was trying to stall, but because I kept running the conversation in my head, over and over. Every version ended differently. In some, he understood immediately and pulled me into a hug. In others, he shut down completely and told me to leave. What actually happened wasn't either of those. It was a Thursday night. We'd ordered Thai and were on the couch, legs tangled up, some dumb reality show playing in the background. I wasn't watching. I couldn't even taste the food. My stomach was a tight knot the whole time. Liam noticed. He nudged my knee with his. You okay? You've been weird all night. I set my takeout box down, took a breath. I need to tell you something. That got his attention. He muted the TV, sat up straighter. His eyes scanned my face like he was trying to gauge how bad it was going to be. You're not dying, right? He asked, trying to keep it light. No, I said. Nothing like that. Cheated on me? No. Okay, good. He waited. So what is it? I stared at my hands for a second, then said it as gently as I could. I used to see your dad as my therapist. There was a beat. Just one. And then, you what? I looked up. His expression hadn't changed yet, like his brain hadn't fully caught up with the words. I started seeing him last year, way before we met. I had no idea he was your dad. He never mentioned you, and obviously I didn't either. It was a total coincidence. Liam blinked, sat back. His mouth opened, then closed again. You're serious? I found out the day he came by your place, I said. He didn't say anything then, but we talked after. He said I should tell you myself. Liam stood up, started pacing, running a hand through his hair. His cheeks were flushed, and he wouldn't look at me. How long did you keep seeing him after we started dating? I hesitated. A few weeks. His head snapped toward me. So while we were together, you were still, what, talking about me with him? No, I stopped bringing you up when I realized there might be something serious. And once I put the pieces together, I stopped seeing him. He let out a sharp breath and sat down again, rubbing his hands over his face. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the muted TV. Jesus. I'm sorry, I said. I know it's a lot. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. He finally looked at me. And what hurt most wasn't the anger. It was the disappointment. You should have told me the second you figured it out. I know. I was scared. He nodded, like that made sense but didn't make it okay. I'm trying not to freak out, he said after a while, because I know you didn't do anything wrong. Not on purpose. And my dad, yeah, I guess I get why he didn't say anything either. It's just weird. I nodded slowly. Is this a deal breaker? I asked. He didn't answer right away. I don't know, he said. I just need some time. That weekend, we didn't talk much. He didn't ask me to leave, but things were quiet, careful, like we were both trying not to knock over something fragile. I gave him space, went back to my place, let him breathe. On Monday, he texted me. Want to get coffee? I met him at this little corner cafe we used to go to before we started sleeping together, back when we were just 2 guys flirting over lattes. He was already there when I arrived, hoodie pulled over his head, fingers wrapped around a paper cup. He looked up as I sat down. No smile, but not cold either. "I talked to my dad," he said. I braced myself. He didn't break any rules. He was vague when we talked, but I could tell he was trying to protect both of us. He didn't manipulate anything. He didn't even seem mad, just tired. I nodded. "I'm glad." "I'm not mad at you," Liam said. "Not really. Just surprised. It's a lot to process. I thought I was getting to know you, and then suddenly, you're this part of a world I've kept really separate from my own." "I get that." He looked at me for a long moment. "And I keep asking myself, does it change anything? Like, who you were when you were with him, and who you are now, with me. Is it the same person?" "It is," I said firmly. "I didn't become someone else. I just got help. And honestly, most of the stuff I worked through in therapy is what made me ready to even have something real with you." That made him smile. Just barely, but it was there. "I don't want this to end," I added. "Me neither," he said. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. "I just need a little time, but I'm not going anywhere." Things didn't snap back to normal right away. Liam wasn't distant. He wasn't cold or angry, but there was a new kind of silence between us, one that hadn't been there before, the kind where you could tell someone was still sorting through how they felt about you, even while they held your hand or let you kiss them goodnight. I kept telling myself it made sense. I'd drop something heavy in his lap. Anyone would need time to adjust. But that didn't make it easier when he didn't text back for a few hours, or when we were lying in bed and he rolled away instead of curling into me like he used to. We didn't talk about his dad. Not directly. But I could feel him in the room with us all the time now. When Liam asked me how my day was, when I hesitated before answering, when I remembered I'd told his dad some version of the same answer a year ago, while trying not to cry in a beige office chair, it made everything feel messier, like someone had shuffled the cards, and now I didn't know which memories were private anymore. One night, about a week after the coffee meetup, I stayed over at Liam's place again. We ordered Chinese and watched some stupid cooking competition show on mute, while making up our own commentary. It was the first time I'd seen him really laugh since the reveal, and for a few hours I let myself believe we were past it. But then, as we were getting ready for bed, he asked, "What did you tell him about me?" I froze halfway through brushing my teeth. He was sitting on the bed, legs crossed, watching me. "I mean, back when you didn't know who he was." I rinsed and leaned in the doorway, towel slung over my shoulder. I told him I was seeing someone, that it felt easy, that he made me feel like myself again. Liam looked down, running a hand through his hair. "That's weird to hear," he admitted. "It's like, I don't know, like you were falling for me, but telling my dad about it before I even knew we were a thing." I walked over and sat beside him. "I get it," I said, "but that version of me didn't know any of this. I was just trying to make sense of something good for once." He nodded slowly. "Did he ever say anything about me? I mean, before you knew?" "No," I said. "He never mentioned you at all. I had no clue." He let out a breath and leaned his head on my shoulder. "I keep thinking about all the ways this could have gone wrong," he said. "Like, what if he had figured it out before we did? What if he'd said something, or cut you off?" "He didn't," I said, "and I think that says a lot." Liam was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't want this to feel like some weird triangle. You and me and my dad, as the ghost of therapy passed." I smiled. "Me neither." He turned to face me. "Then tell me something you didn't tell him," he said. "Something just for me." It was a small thing. A test, maybe. A way to reclaim some part of what we had. Something that hadn't passed through a therapist's ears. I thought about it for a second, then said, "The first night we met, I almost didn't go. I was having a shit day. I'd gotten ghosted the week before. My confidence was in the trash. I was this close to bailing. He smiled faintly. Why didn't you? Because of your profile picture, I said. You look like the kind of guy who might laugh at my jokes. I took a chance. And I was right. That made him laugh for real. A full-body kind of laugh that shook the bed slightly. He leaned in and kissed me. And it was soft and warm, and didn't feel like there was anyone else in the room with us. Not even his dad. We started to find a rhythm again. It wasn't exactly how it had been. There were still moments of awkwardness. Moments where Liam would catch himself before asking something that felt therapist-adjacent, and I'd gently steer the conversation somewhere else. But overall, it felt like the foundation was still solid. Then came the dinner invitation. Liam's mom, who I hadn't met yet, wanted to have us over. She knows about you, Liam said. Not about the whole therapist thing, just that we're together. I raised an eyebrow. And your dad? He hesitated. He'll be there. Of course he would. I said yes. Because I wanted to meet his mom. Because I didn't want to act like we had something to hide. And because if I was going to be in this relationship for real, I couldn't keep avoiding the one person who had basically mapped my entire emotional interior. Dinner was on a Sunday. His parents lived in a quiet neighborhood outside the city, in a house with a wraparound porch and wind chimes on the front awning. His mom, Nora, was exactly what I imagined. Bright-eyed, overly welcoming, immediately offering me wine and asking if I had siblings. Max Drive. Brennan greeted me with a polite handshake and a slight smile. Nothing more. If Nora noticed anything off, she didn't show it. She talked enough for everyone at the table, telling stories about Liam's childhood, about his failed attempt to run away at age 10. He made it to the corner store. About how he once told a waiter he was vegan because he didn't want to eat green beans. Liam groaned. I laughed. Even Max smiled at that one. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Until dessert. Nora went into the kitchen to grab plates, and Liam followed her to help, which left me alone in the dining room. With him. Max cleared his throat. You seem happier. I met his gaze. I am. He nodded. I can see it. Whatever concerns I had, they're quieter now. That means a lot, I said and meant it. Then he leaned in slightly. But if you ever hurt him, I won't, I said quickly. He held my gaze for a beat, then nodded. Good. And just like that, dessert was served. It's funny how a moment you've dreaded can happen so calmly. I'd spent weeks building up that dinner in my head, rehearsing conversations, imagining dramatic confrontations, picturing Max pulling me aside and warning me to stay away from his son. But in the end, all it took was one look across the table, one nod, one shared understanding that we'd made it through the weird part, mostly. After that night, Liam seemed lighter, more himself. Like something had clicked into place for him once he saw me in his childhood home, sitting across from his parents, passing the salad bowl like it was just another Sunday dinner. I think she liked you more than me, he joked on the drive home. She complimented my shirt twice, I said. Either that's love or concern for your taste. He laughed, reached over, and rested his hand on my thigh while he drove. That simple touch, so casual, so familiar, meant more to me than anything else that night. Because it wasn't loaded, it wasn't hesitant. It was just him, choosing to be close. That week, we started making plans. Real ones. A trip to Palm Springs in the spring. An art show Liam wanted me to come to. A lease renewal for my apartment that had me hesitating because suddenly, the idea of us living together didn't feel crazy anymore. But just as things started to feel steady, something happened that reminded me we weren't out of the woods yet. It started with a text. From an unknown number. You're the guy who dated his therapist's son, right? I stared at the screen for a long second, then replied, Who is this? No response. I blocked the number. Told myself it was just some troll. The internet is weird, people hear things. Maybe Liam had mentioned something to someone, or maybe someone at Max's office put it together. Whatever, it didn't matter. Until it happened again. Different number. Same message. Does your boyfriend know what you said about him in therapy? This time, I didn't reply. I went straight to Liam. He was sitting on the floor in his studio, sketching. The place smelled like charcoal and coffee and the faint musk of his cologne. He looked up when I walked in and immediately clocked my expression. What's wrong? I handed him the phone. He read the messages, frown deepening. What the hell? I have no idea who it is, I said, but this one's new. The last message? It's someone who knew I was in therapy. You think it's someone from his office? I shrugged. It's possible, but Max is private. I don't think he'd tell anyone. Liam stood, running a hand through his hair. Okay, we'll figure it out, I blinked. We? He walked over, put both hands on my shoulders. Of course we. I'm not going to let someone screw with you over something that's none of their business. Even if it's about your dad. He gave me a look, especially then. I exhaled slowly. The knot in my chest loosened a little. Later that night, I sent Max an email, told him about the messages, didn't point fingers, just asked if he'd had any issues with confidentiality on his end. He called me the next morning. I'm sorry that happened, he said, but I can assure you, no one from my practice would have accessed your records or spoken about your case. We're meticulous about this, and legally, they wouldn't have known your name unless you gave permission. I hadn't, which meant, whoever it was, they weren't using official channels. I'll look into it from my side, he added. But in the meantime, be careful. People have a way of twisting things they don't understand. I thanked him and hung up with a pit in my stomach. The messages stopped after that. Maybe Max scared them off. Maybe whoever it was got bored. But it left a mark on both of us. Liam started asking more questions. Subtle ones, at first. What did you talk about in therapy back then? Did you ever mention me before you knew who he was? What would you have said if you had? I answered honestly, most of the time. There were a few sessions I didn't bring up. Ones where I'd gone into detail about how anxious I got when guys didn't text back. How I worried I was always too much or not enough. How I overanalyzed every signal, every silence. How my past had made me weird about intimacy, always looking for the catch. And yeah, some of that had come up again after I started dating Liam, before I knew who he was. I'd told Max I was afraid I'd mess things up, that I liked this guy, but I couldn't tell if he was really into me or just being polite. I dissected the way he looked at me, the way he kissed me, the way he pulled away sometimes, and how it made my chest ache in a way I hadn't felt in years. And Max had listened, had helped me breathe through it. Now Liam was asking about those things from the other side, and I could feel the edges of old conversations brushing up against our present. You ever worry that I'm just a product of all that therapy? He asked one night, curled up beside me in bed. What do you mean? Like, that you worked through so much shit in those sessions, and now I'm the healthy relationship reward? I turned to face him, heart aching a little. No, I said. You're not a reward. You're the reason I want it to be better. He didn't respond for a long moment. Then he whispered, okay. And just like that, he reached for my hand and pulled it to his chest. I thought that once we got past the weirdness, things would even out. That after meeting Liam's parents, surviving the anonymous texts, and talking through the fallout, we'd find some kind of new normal. And we did. For a while. But the truth is, some things don't go back to normal. They change shape. Quietly. Without you noticing, until one day you realize you're living in a different version of the story. One where everything feels a little more fragile. Liam was still Liam. Funny. Sharp. Affectionate in that offbeat way I loved. Grabbing my wrist when I walked by just to pull me in for a kiss. Sending me videos of raccoons doing dumb things. Sleeping diagonally across the bed like he was trying to colonize it. But he was also more cautious. Not in a big way. In small ways. When I mentioned emotions or talked about something heavy, he'd get quiet. Like he was trying to figure out how much of it had already been said to someone else. Someone who happened to be his father. We were at brunch one Sunday when it bubbled up again. He was scrolling through his phone. showing me pictures of an old painting he was thinking about revisiting. I was half listening, sipping bad diner coffee, when I made a joke about how different I was now compared to a year ago. He smirked. Therapy'll do that. It was a throwaway line, but something in his tone made me pause. You say that like it's a bad thing? I said. He looked up. No, just, it's weird, okay? I put my cup down. Talk to me. He sighed, leaning back in the booth. I guess sometimes I wonder if I'm still competing with that version of me you talked about before you knew who I was. You're not. I know. But still, you talked about me to my dad. You processed your feelings for me before I even knew you were catching feelings. It's like you had a head start. I reached across the table, resting my hand over his. Maybe I did, but that didn't make it easier. If anything, it made it harder. I liked you before I knew who you were, but I also had to unlearn every thought I ever unpacked with your dad and relearn you as you. He didn't pull away, but he didn't look at me either. Would you ever go back? He asked quietly. To therapy? He nodded. I don't know. Maybe. With him? I paused. That was the first time he'd asked it outright. No, I said. Not because he wasn't good. He was. But I couldn't be honest anymore. Not about you. Not about us. He swallowed. Gave a small nod. Okay. We didn't say much after that. Paid the check. Walked home in silence. That night, we sat on the floor of his studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases. He was painting, and I was pretending to read, but mostly, I was just watching the way he moved, how focused he got when he was in his zone, how the tip of his tongue peeked out when he concentrated, how quiet he got when he was trying to keep something in. I love you, I said out of nowhere. He stopped mid-stroke, turned to me slowly. I know it's messy, I continued. The way this started, who your dad is, what I've said. But I love you. Not the version I talked about in therapy. Not the idea of you. Just you. Who you are when you're painting at 1 a.m. Who you are when you dance in the kitchen to 2000s pop. Who you are when you say nothing and still manage to calm me down. He stared at me like he wasn't sure if I was real. Then he put the brush down and crawled into my lap, arms around my neck, forehead against mine. I love you too, he whispered. The next day I got a text from Max. I won't lie, I had my doubts, but Nora said she saw it, and I see it too now. He's better with you, stronger, softer. Whatever this is, you're good for each other. I read the message twice, smiled, then tucked my phone away without responding. Some things didn't need to be said back. Spring came fast that year. Liam's studio started to smell like linseed oil and fresh canvas again. We left the windows open more. Drank cold brew on the fire escape like we were in a coming-of-age movie. There were mornings we barely talked and nights we couldn't stop touching each other. Like the silence between us had finally stopped being something to fix. Things weren't perfect, but they were ours. We didn't talk about Max much anymore. Occasionally he'd come up in passing. My dad says the gallery opening next week might actually be good. Or he asked if you're still into those pretentious French movies. But the sharpness that used to come with his name had dulled. We survived it. Not just the awkwardness, but the adjustment. We survived the moment when trust could have cracked. And the ones where it did. A little. And had to be glued back together. Not with apologies, but with presence. With staying. A few months after our brunch talk, Liam painted something new. He wouldn't let me see it while he was working on it. Just taped a sheet over the canvas like it was some national security secret. When he finally unveiled it, I didn't say anything for a long time. It wasn't a portrait. Not directly. It was a cityscape at dusk, done in oils and smudged charcoal. Stark outlines of rooftops and power lines under a blue-gray sky. But in the corner of one window, just barely visible, was the faint silhouette of two men sitting side by side. One of them holding the other's hand. You can't see their faces, he said, but I know it's us. I nodded, still staring. Yeah, me too. He sold that painting for almost $2,000. The guy who bought it said it made him feel like someone else out there understood. I didn't ask Liam if that bothered him, giving something so personal to a stranger. He just said, "Good. That's what it's for." We never got a neat resolution with Max. No final conversation. No, "Hey, remember when you used to cry in my office and now you're dating my kid?" Moment. But he sent me a birthday text. A brief, respectful, oddly warm message that said, "You've always been more open than you thought. I hope this year is good to you." It was. Liam and I moved in together that fall. Just a one-bedroom with bad lighting and questionable plumbing. But it had charm, and more importantly, it had space for both of us to just be. To exist without roles or expectations. No more therapist, no more patient. Just two people who chose each other, even when it would have been easier not to. We still argued sometimes. Still had quiet fights about nothing. Laundry, dishes, who forgot to Venmo for groceries. But we never left the room angry. We never went to bed with walls between us. That's the thing about going through something complicated at the beginning. You get used to working things out, because you already know what it feels like to almost lose it. One night, almost a year after that day on Liam's doorstep, I asked him, "Do you ever wish it happened differently?" He looked up from the book he was reading. Like what? Like, we met and it was all simple. No backstory, no dad-shaped complications. He smiled a little. "No, I mean, maybe, but then you wouldn't have talked about me in therapy before we even kissed. And honestly, that kind of makes me feel special." I laughed. "You're such a weirdo." "Yeah, but I'm your weirdo." And that was it. That was the story. Messy at the start, twisty in the middle, but real. The kind you don't plan for. The kind you keep anyway.